Yeah, so this latest episode, this latest offering was one that may have sent me closer to the edge of patience than any of the episodes previously. Even the really dull, boring fourth episode. Which episode was it? Fourth episode. The forest walking simulator. And my YouTube video reflected that somewhat because I was not in any kind of mood for it at all. And it's becoming quite par for the course now with this show that the characters 180 on their own morals and character traits. They jump back and forth between with their intentions with a lot of this story. They switch sides so very quickly that it's really jarring, and you can't actually keep up with anything that's going on, to the point where it just becomes, as you pointed out backstage, just a little bit dry and essentially boring.
Yeah, and I just think it's a shame. Like, I mean, I'm no big Star Wars person, but for these big IPs, I know we've said it so many times, but these big IPs to be kind of like ground into the dirt like this is just upsetting, because for a lot of people, obviously, Star Wars, Star Trek, or Doctor Who, have been like a big part of their lives, particularly in their childhood, or particularly maybe when they're going through like a traumatic event, and it's just a shame to me to see it end up like this, and to see it being used as such a political pawn, by these actors who are basically just activists. We won't name anyone in particular, but we all know who I mean on this show.
Yes.
And people can legitimately criticize something if it isn't good. And this is not a good show. It's not good. The story writing is very poor. The acting, apart from Lee Jung Jae's acting, is pretty terrible. I mean, I'm no actress, but I'm pretty sure I could probably do a better job. Do you know what I mean? Than certain people on this in this show, because they just don't even look like they want to be there. It's like they've turned up being like, oh, seriously?
Yeah,
seriously? Do you know what I mean? And
it's like someone has just turned to them and said, "Here, read this."
Yeah.
Go. And it struck me as again very obvious where they were coming from with making this show very early on. I mean, it was obvious to so many, but you have hasn't Headland come out recently about the review bombing? Review bombing the show. People have review bombed it. It's funny how when the negative reviews, it's review bombed, but when there's positive reviews, that's something completely different. And it's quite childish in my point of view for them to say, "Oh, our show's being review bombed," because the truth of it is your show is terrible. And people speaking their minds about it and voting voting being quite the relevant point at this particular juncture, especially for the UK. But yeah, people are voting with their minds and their money and giving their opinions. So for them to turn around and say we're getting a load of negative reviews, it must be trolls review bombing our show. I think it's quite insulting, really, when they could take the approach that a few studios actually have, and a few creative teams actually have in recent years, and say, okay guys, what was the problem? Let's see what we can do about it. Okay, so that was really bad. We'll work on that for the next season. If we get a next season, we'll definitely consider doing that. And taking that viewer feedback and doing something with it, because you can't build something great without feedback. You know, I remember when I was a lot younger, I used to hate surveys and stuff like that. But they're actually very important for the people conducting them, because these people, you know, genuinely want to know how they can improve something. And from a financial standpoint, they want to know how to make more money. And they don't make more money by attacking the customer. You never do that. That's the worst business model you can have, to attack your customer based on what your customer thinks of your product.
Yeah, exactly. And it just smacks of just arrogance. That's why I find it very arrogant and very narcissistic that they think any criticism of their show is due to people review bombing. When actually, if you look at the negative reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, for example, they are all differentiated, and it's obviously in the main genuine people, not bots.
Mm.
Whereas if you look at the positive reviews for this show, The Acolyte, they are obviously copy pasted. Do you know
Yes.
what I mean? A lot of them are exactly the same or very, very similar. Do you know what I mean? And so I'm like, in all probability, those are probably bots. That's probably bots. So if there's any review bombing going on with this show, it is the positive reviews that are fake.
Yes.
And I'm sure there are people who are, you know, I, I'm not saying that Amanda Stenberg is lying when she says she's received racist abuse. She probably has from some fringe people. Do you
Yes.
know what I mean? I'm not going to deny that that's happened, but like I think in the main, Star Wars fans, you know, just don't like the show. They don't have any particular feelings towards the actors on the show. You know, they might think their acting's not very good. Like in the main, the acting on the show is terrible, apart from Lee Jung Jae.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, they're not personally attacking the actors, and so I just don't understand why they have this kind of thing that they like anyone who criticizes a show is criticizing a person. It's like not really.
No.
I don't think that's the same thing, and I don't understand why they have that weird narcissistic kind of obsession with having everyone having to say it's a great show.
Mm.
You know, because people are opinionated.
Yes.
And if you were in a company, you couldn't say anyone giving you feedback is racist or sexist or homophobic. It's just
No.
ridiculous. You know, it's you can't run a business like that. You can't work in a company like that. So again, it just shows you how detached from reality some of these people are. Like they're just completely in their own little world. And you know, to be fair to Amanda Stenberg, she has grown up in Hollywood. You know, because she was obviously in the Hunger Games, wasn't she? When she was a
Mm.
child.
Yes.
They Rue.
Yeah, she played the little girl, didn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to be fair to her, she's been indoctrinated into this kind of mentality of like everyone's a victim, and do you know what I mean? So maybe that has played into how she's taken the feedback from the acolyte,
Mm.
as being that way. But yeah, I just again, it's like with what they've done to Star Trek. It's just that the arrogance, you know, the narcissistic kind of like viewpoint that they have is just it's very difficult to stomach, you
Mm.
know, and I think that's why people have just switched off. They're just like, do you know what? I'll just watch Nerdrotic or Drinkers reviews because I don't want to give them the airtime. And I don't want to donate my time
Yeah.
to watching this show, which is obviously made by people who hate the IP, who don't like the IP, you know?
Well, quite honestly, who's going to want to subject themselves to this show based on what generally speaking, word of mouth has told them? Because you know, and to your point about people receiving all kinds of inappropriate comments and stuff, I receive inappropriate comments on my channel. I'm currently sitting at, I don't know, 1,850 subscribers or whatever it is right now. I'm currently sitting around that mark, and I receive some quite salty comments now and then. So that does happen with a small channel like mine. Now, if you amplify that with Star Wars and how popular it is and how many people actually watch Star Wars, of course they're going to get some salty comments. They're going to get some edgy individuals pointing things out that really are inappropriate. It's going to happen. So they're going to receive some backlash. But giving that backlash focus really sends the wrong kind of message, doesn't it? It's really you're amplifying something that's proportionally minute, and you're making it a bigger deal than it really is. Yes, there are people in the world who are of that particular, opinion, which the court of public opinion deals with them anyway. They're shunned by society, as rightfully so they should be. But when you're going to shift the focus away from the poor quality of your show and create, as Zell quite often says, a straw man argument for why your show is unpopular, I think you're doing yourself and others a great disservice, and you're doing a disservice to people who actually suffer from this kind of stuff. So generally speaking, as you said, and I agree, and I said in my video, the show is ran by a bunch of narcissists, and one thing that is becoming quite prevalent in modern society is narcissism. I'd say we're in a narcissist epidemic, because it's pretty much everywhere these days. And you can blame that on any number of factors: social media, the government, and new ideas that are proving to be quite unpopular. But one thing I am noticing when people will accuse this show of being woke, for example, is that, again, that becomes a straw man argument for people's opinion on this show, because it becomes a very easy thing to accuse the show of being, oh, it's woke, oh, it's woke, oh, it's woke. Okay, so is it really that woke? Not. I would say it's not, but it's probably not as woke as they are claiming. People are claiming it is. I'd say it's hiding the larger problem with this show, and that is the appalling writing, the appalling acting. Apart from Lee Juan, apart from the Squid Game guy, I did it. Apart from him, it's terrible acting. It's wooden. It's poorly written. It's I think, very poorly edited and directed. I can't actually find a redeeming feature about the show from a creative standpoint. I simply can't do it. So saying, oh yes, it's woke Star Wars and all of that stuff is fine if that is the main problem with it. And again, the court of public opinion will speak about that. But this show, the quality of this show is so shockingly poor that it becomes it hides that problem. And they hide behind these fake arguments to avoid the simple truth. They are void of any creativity.
Yeah, I agree with that. It is just, I don't really care. Honestly, I don't really care about whether something's woke or not. I don't care, because if something's got a good story, I'll watch it. Like, honestly, I don't mind. And I do agree with you. It is a straw man argument, because, franchises, particularly like Star Trek, Star Wars less so, but Star Trek has always been progressive, and that is true. Yes,
yeah,
that is a true statement. But the issue with modern Star Trek is that the writing is terrible. It's just terrible, and it makes it unwatchable. Well, it's not true to the franchise.
Yeah, exactly. But there's an additional level to that, as I've stated before. Star Trek's always been progressive, and progressive ideas have been at the core of Star Trek, and none of us have ever argued differently. But the straw man argument there is that it is when they say Star Trek's always been woke, because woke and progressivism, as I've said before, to me, in my opinion, are very different things. You can put a progressive idea out there, but the minute you force that progressive idea and you start inserting everywhere that it's really not relevant and making that the focus, that to me screams wokeism. Okay, so I think that Star Trek, I don't think Star Trek would have been anywhere near as popular as it was, and still is to this day in terms of the older Star Trek, if it weren't for those progressive ideas? Would Star Trek be on the map if it didn't have the first interracial kiss? You know, if it would Star Trek be on the map if it hadn't had, you know, Nichelle Nicole at the communication station, or a female first officer. And you have to sort of, you have to look at it from that perspective. It probably wouldn't have been as mainstream as it became, but certainly back in the day. So it's always pushed progressive ideas, and you know, you and I share a similar sort of opinion on this. We have no problem with growing as a society and being progressive and pushing new ideas. Absolutely, get them out there, see what people think. The court of public opinion, again, will speak on things, and everybody's got an opinion. But when you force it and then use narcissistic traits to accuse people of isms and phobes and phobias and stuff like that, and you denigrate the entire point. You remove all front foot sort of experience with it. You don't gain anything from it. In fact, what you do is you turn people against you, and this is what this show has done. It has turned Star Wars fans against the creators. It's damaged the franchise, or I think irrevocably, and that was a big word for my twisty tongue to get out.